Yeah, thanks everyone for joining the call today. My name is Christopher. Kyrillos has just introduced himself, and Michaela and Sakinat, but just for the recording, if you don't mind, I'll ask you to go again. So starting from Michaela, can you do a quick introduction, please?
Hello, yes, my name is Michaela and I'm a civil engineer working with Arcadis in London. Yeah, I'm also one of the Y20 delegates for the UK on the Sustainable Planet track, so hoping to share lessons from this with that group as well.
Sakinat?
Hi everyone, I'm Sakina Bello from Nigeria. I'm a co-founder for a Breakthrough from Plastic Awareness Initiative, a part of Yungo Women and Gender Working Group, NDC, and Tech and Science Group. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Sakinat. Kyrillos?
Kyrillos Kostovs, a civil engineer based in the UK, work for ACOM, a major engineering consultancy. A colleague of Chris and Michaela, as a part of the World Federation of Engineering Organizations Global Young Engineers Working Group on Climate Action, and also a part of Youngo and Youth for Climate Delegate for Latvia.
And I'll go next. My name is Christopher Chukunta. I work in the World Federation of Engineering Organizations, Young Engineers Future Leaders Working Group with Kyrillos and Michaela. And together with the working group, we've pulled together a capacity building work stream in the lead up to COP27, and that's a lesson from COP26, which covers a wide range of topics to help youth to be a lot more involved and contribute to the outcomes of COP, both at the local level and more importantly, during the consensus building events at the COP27 and beyond. We've got Killian on the call, who's going to be the facilitator for today's event. And I'm going to do, he's going to introduce himself, but then I'm going to, as part of the introduction to the workshop, I'm going to talk a bit about Killian as well, and then throw the mic back to him to take us through this workshop at the essence of it. The WAFIO working group, we started last year, wrote up some recommendations, which was really very well received by the Global Climate Committee or Climate Group and leaders, world leaders. And as a result of that, we're looking at potentially taking the recommendations that we feel hasn't been taken on board from last year to COP27 this year, and then also build on some of the new work streams that are coming up with the IPCC and the other UN member company groups to get some of the work going as it relates to, say, the business sector, which Kyrillos is leading. We will go hoping to get some traction in that space this year, and then get some recommendations hopefully next year at the COP28. But for today, we're going to be talking about the impact of different policy and programs that are lined up across the local and regional sectors and how it impacts on the bottom line, which is global warming. But to kick that off, I'm going to pass the mic on to Killian to introduce himself first, and then I'll talk about our plan for the rest of the year. Killian?
Great. Well, yeah, I'll keep it brief. But basically, I met Chris at COP, where I was doing a workshop very similar to this one. So that's really where this started. I'm in the ACE working group. I'm data analyst, and I work in renewable energy projects. So I look at risk exposures for wind turbines, solar farms, anything renewable really. So that's me. And I'm also a facilitator for Climate Interactive, where I do these sort of workshops. This one's more of a shorter form version. So hopefully we'll be able to do it, do it in an hour, but it's likely that we're gonna have to do it for longer, because I can see that we're already 13 minutes over time. So hopefully you can stay. If you can't, please watch the recording. But it'd be great to have all of you stay for a bit longer as well. So yeah, I think I'm ready to just, I'm excited to start doing this. So, well, here you can see, that's me doing the presentation at COP. You can contact me, okay? This is really a short version. I do longer workshops that can last up to half a day or even a full day. But I think the importance here, we're a few people. I think it's important that we connect together as well. If you're watching the recording, connect with me either by email or on LinkedIn. I'm going to share my LinkedIn in the chat so you can connect with me. But I think that's where this is really starting conversations. That's what I'm thinking about this sort of workshop. It's about getting you involved and hopefully maybe challenging your ideas. I think you guys are very educated, so but hopefully it'd be ways where you can also look at your own policies that you're looking to implement as a youth leaders, and you're able to refine them as well, and maybe see ways you can improve them. So yeah, Christopher, did you want to explain more about where this came from and the next different courses we have?
Yes, please. Thanks a lot, Killian. So last month, we had the guys from Duke University, Gabriella, who talked us through the UNFCCC systems and structures. Now, today, we're having the EnROADS Simulation, which is basically helping us to understand global impact of and also regional impact of each of the climate policies and action. And then the next one we're going to be having is in July, in June, which is the engagement with Cambridge University to talk us through how to best lobby at the COP27 and similar events. And then in July, we're going to be understanding the dilemmas that UN parties have to face in coming to a global consensus. There's quite a lot of lobbying groups or negotiating blocks that need to be aligned to come to a consensus, and that takes quite a lot of work. So just understanding how that is set up, I think, is very key to be able to make an impact. Then after that, in August, we'll be having the COP27 simulation, which is basically an understanding of what to expect at the COP, how to maximize the opportunity for impact as well. And then in September 15th, we'll be having a pre-COP high-level engagement with national parties that will be attending the COP in Egypt this year. And then we bring it all together October 17. So I would like to really thank the members of the working group on the call and those who are not able to join today, Kyrios, Michaela, for putting together a solid capacity building roadmap for the rest of the year, and also for all the work that they're doing in the background to get the climate policy recommendations that represents the voice of youth, unified voice, global voice of youth, to the UN parties and those that are going to be present and global leaders at the COP27 and beyond, and also for building up the draft work that's going to be coming together as the business sector policy recommendations. So I would say it's really some great work going on. And if you're interested in getting to know more, please, by all means, reach out to myself or Kyrios or Michaela on the call, and we'll be more than happy to talk to you about what we're doing. I'll do a quick introduction of Killian, who's going to be taking us through today's session. Killian is working with Axis, is a renewable energy analyst for Axis, and he's very passionate about driving systemic change towards solving the climate crisis. He has facilitated workshops on climate change with decision makers at COP26 and with over 45 different schools and universities, such as the ITT in Delhi. He communicates the importance of artificial intelligence to transition society to renewable energy sources and for countries to achieve their climate goals. On that note, I'll say, Killian, over to you.
All right. Could you also make me host?
Doing
if that works for you. Or what we can do is let's go through the PowerPoint and then you can make me host after that. Would that be?
No,
better?
you've got.
I'm the host.
Already, so
I'm the host. Okay.
Shoot.
I'll do it.
Cool.
Okay. see. So this is the EnROADS simulator. The thing is, I don't know if we have time for the PowerPoint. Just to check with the rest of the participants. Do any of you have to, sorry, I'm coming back to this, but do any of you have to jump off the call? Second, are you okay with doing it for an hour now? Or should I just go in straight into it? I'll do the PowerPoint. I'll just go very fast through it, okay? Let's do it. All right.
Killian, I'll suggest we stop at the top of the hour as planned, if that's okay. Okay.
Well, then I'll just go very fast. So basically, Climate Interactive is a think tank from MIT. That's it, really. Agenda, we're going to look at, so I'm just going to introduce what it is, and then we're going to look at what scenarios are the best for climate success for really reaching our Paris Agreement goals. So introduction, EnROADS basically is using the latest science, the latest IPCC reports to create a model using system dynamics. And I won't bore you with how you build those models, but basically it really helps to understand and to make decisions, because you're able to look from a distance and see maybe more of a holistic version of the solutions you're looking at, being able to see how everything's interconnected, everything sort of influences one another. Very much using systems thinking, if you're familiar with that. And so that's what we're going to do today. We're going to have you create these policies, or even policies you've already worked on, and see, well, are we able to reach basically the Paris Agreement goals of 1.5 or 2 degrees Celsius by 2100? All right. So I'm just gonna, you guys are probably very familiar with it, but we're going to look at really what happens, what are the impacts at the different levels of warming. So let's say we reach 3 degrees warming. We're going to have an Arctic sea ice, which has gone in 2 out of every 3 summers. We're going to have 50% of insect species basically lost, about 50% of their habitat range as well, because they can't live. They basically, we're going to have a huge biodiversity loss. Droughts are going to last 11 months or longer. And we're going to have areas burned by summer wildfires in the Mediterranean double compared to today. So here's just an image. If you're familiar with London, this is basically Westminster, and it'll be under the water. So that's 4 degrees warming. And you'd have to be a brave commuter if you want to go to work. You have to be swimming to your office, basically. All right, so we don't want that. Scenarios of climate success. So here, I'm just going to give you a little introduction of the model. Basically, I'm going to go pretty fast through it. We've got energy supply that we can look at. We have transport, we have buildings and industry, we have growth, we have land and industry emissions, and we've got carbon removal. So I want you as well, when basically going to change at the end of this presentation, I'm going to get you to come up with ways in which you think you can reduce the temperature increase to 2 degrees Celsius. But I want you to think in multi-solving lens. What are the solutions which are going to be solving many things together? And the fact that we need more than one solution. This is an introduction, but you're going to see more when we've got the model. But really to understand what are the ones that have the most impact. I think it's important as well, after you've seen how horrible 3 degrees or 4 degrees would be and of increase in global temperatures. We've got to think that we have the tools. Solar and wind are growing and getting cheaper. Corporations are investing in clean tech. Countries and states are stepping up, and hopefully with your help, they're really going to be able to push the right policies. and the general public is becoming more educated and engaged. And I think that's a huge part of it. More people get educated. Even that's why I'm actually inviting you. If you have people you think that could really benefit from a workshop like this, let me know, and maybe we can organize something from them. Because I think the more people understand what policies are important, the more they can actually influence and lobby their governments and really be a voice for change. So going from there, let's look at global climate strikes. The fact that in September 2019, we have over 7 million people in 185 countries which are speaking about this, which are going to the streets and shouting that they've had enough, really. And I'm gonna go, okay. I think, so now let's start this. Let's, the aim is going to be now, because we don't have, I think the best way to do this would basically be for me to maybe individually get you to come up with different solutions. So I know Chris and Kira's, you've already done this before. So I'm going to ask you though, so everyone who's joined, I don't know if there's any newcomers to the call, but I'm going to ask you, so you've seen here, and just to repeat, this is 3.6 degrees is the world we're currently in. This is where we're going. We're going to 3 degrees warming, 4 degrees warming by 2100. And we, as a team today, we're going to have to find a way to bring this down to 2 degrees or 1.5 degrees. So what do you think is the best way to basically to lower the global temperature by as much? What do you think out of energy supplies, transport, buildings and industry, growth, land and industry emissions, carbon removal? What's going to be the most effective way of doing this? And I'm going to invite you now to unmute yourselves to basically propose a policy. And the policy can be what you think, even something you're working as a youth leader on. So I'm inviting, so anyone who wants to do it, because there's not that many people, just unmute yourself and propose it. All right. Is there anyone who wants to go? Do you want to go, Chris?
Yeah, I was going to suggest maybe if we have the simulator on and we can ask people what they will do just looking at the simulator, I think that would help make it a bit more interactive, if that's okay.
Can you see the simulator?
No, not yet. No.
I'm sharing it.
Okay. Can anyone else see a simulator? I'm seeing the last page of the screen. That's the last page of the presentation.
Sorry. Okay. Yeah, you should have interrupted me then. I'll try. I'll just share the screen again.
Please, yes.
Okay. Can you see it now? Sorry about that. Can you see it?
Perfect. Yes, we can. Yes.
Great. Perfect. Awesome. All right. So I'm just going to repeat what I was saying. But so this is the plus 3.6 degrees is the current world we're heading to. This is what is going to happen if we don't basically start changing the way we've been living. The temperature increased by 2100, 3.6. And as you've seen in the slides, we don't want that. So now I basically, and so the ways to reduce this is we're going to look at energy supplies, transport, buildings and industry, growth, land and industry emissions, and carbon removal. So I'm going to invite you now to unmute yourselves. And what do you think, looking at these different categories, what's going to be the most effective way of lowering it? And I'd also like to ask you, once you've basically once you've offered a policy, I'd like to, and you can only do one. After that, just say how many degrees you think it's going to lower. So is it going to lower by 1 degree? Basically that. All right. Okay, Sagina, did I say that correctly?
Yeah, it's Sakina. So,
Sakira.
yeah, thank you so much. Actually, over the last 5 years, we've actually worked around issues of deforestation, especially here in Africa, where everybody usually use the local firewood to cook literally in whole household in Africa. So this has caused a lot of issues of deforestation and not just cutting down of these trees, but actually using them for household cooking fuel is actually a major issue. After that, we also have unsustainable usage or inefficient usage because they burn more firewood than it is necessary because of the traditional cooking method they use. So over the last 5 years, I've actually worked with community to see how we can work on tree planting. So there should be change on policy around tree planting. There should be a strategy on, let me say, a policy for all states that for every year they must plant trees. And the second thing we've actually identified and we've tested was we've tried to work on policy document on air pollution, trying to see how we can sensitize people and trying to see how every state can actually begin to take in their air quality measures for all of the states. So if you take air quality measures for all of the cities and in rural community, you can begin to know when you have much emission and when you have less emission, and you can begin to advise citizens on ways to keep the environment air clean. We had a documentary about that, which I'll be sharing in subsequent meetings. It's already on YouTube. We did documentary around that. The third one is actually the efficient cook stove part of it. We try to enlighten women on how unsustainable use of this firewood can actually affect the rate of carbon emission, and how they are burning it is actually inefficient. So it costs them to save more money and also cause issue of deforestation in the community. We introduced the efficient cook stove, which make them to spend just 30% of what they can use. If you're using 100% of firewood before, now you use 30%, and it spends longer time than it expected. And if you're using the coal, it means you're using 10% out of 100% that you are using from the initial method. So we try to reduce all those energy requirements so that the carbon they are going to emit is going to be lesser than what they have.
Yeah.
So it means if you're burning at least maybe 30,000 tons per year, it means if you're using those efficient cook methods and stoves or method, it means you're going to be having like 10% of that is you're going to be having 300 tons instead.
Yeah.
So these are actually what we've been able to do, and it's actually calculation. Thank you.
Sorry for interrupting a second. It's brilliant what you're doing, but really the aim of this is to, because you've said a lot of things and it's great and all of those are great, but can you choose one policy? So one thing that I can simulate, and you can also tell me what impact you think it's going to have in terms of temperature increase.
The policy one is on the energy emission, energy gap. There is a lot of energy gap, especially in household in Africa. So having this policy that actually said that for every household, they need to shift to efficient cook method, and government should be able to support that thing. Let's have budgetary allocation that is going to say for every year, government is going to fund that project or sustainable projects in that year. So when they fund that project, it means that everybody's going to take up that initiative, and then they should call on state of emergency, especially for forest deforestation.
Yeah, okay. And so how much do you think, so I'm going to put up energy efficiency for buildings and industry, but how much do you think this is going to decrease? If we're only looking at it,
at least 1 degree. 1 degree.
1 degree. Okay. How far do you want me to put it? All the way? So one thing about EnROADS, you can also go into a lot more details. So I could be looking at energy efficiency of new buildings and industry increasing per year, and we can look at the start year. But in this case, we don't have much time. So I'm just going to increase it to the full. So you've said you think it's going to be 1 degree. That's a lot. Let's see if it does. Wow. It's gone quite a bit, but is it 1 degree?
Yeah.
No, it's only 0.4. So why do you think, and I think that's just, I'm going to let you sort of reflect on this. Why do you think that that it's not increasing as much, although this is a very good policy. Victoria. You had your hand up, right?
Hey, yeah, I did. I was actually gonna, because I'm representing a small island developing state, Seychelles. So I was quite interested in oil exploration and oil extraction and gas extraction, particularly as we've just signed a new oil exploration agreement. So I really wanted to see what the oil slash natural gas would, what kind of impact it would have if you reduced it significantly.
But sorry, just to answer the question before we go to that, why do you think energy efficiency of buildings and industry is not decreasing as much? And I'd like you to look at actually the graph on the left here. What are the main energy sources at the moment? And that's actually related to what you're saying, Victoria. So if you want to answer, go for it.
I mean, just based on the graph on the left-hand side, when you just look at your coal, oil, gas, I think that goes to show that the energy supply is a key that has to be addressed for us to like target a 1 degree, 1.5 degree decrease. Yeah.
Brilliant. And what should we, what are the, sorry, I'm sort of answering, but what are the energy supplies, because we don't have much time, that actually we're using at the moment? What's the main source that we're using from this? So we're looking at oil. It's oil that we're using the most. It's huge. The thing is, at the moment, there's a bit of renewables. You can see it's a bit increasing, a bit of bioenergy, a bit of gas, but mostly we're looking at oil and coal, and gas is still huge. Those are the main energy sources in the world that we're currently simulating. So what do you think would be, and I think, Victoria, you basically answered it, but what do you think would be a great policy now in this world that's going to affect, how are we going to change the energy sources to get the better renewable energy?
International pledge for no more oil exploration agreements and extraction.
So, yeah, so you wanted to look at, sorry, you wanted to look at oil, right?
Yeah, particularly oil.
Okay.
But gas also, I think, has a fair share if I look at the graph that you have on the left-hand side.
Yeah. So what policy, if you had to choose one, what do you think would be the best? You could also look at putting a carbon price. Is there like one policy that you would go for, and what do you think the decrease will be?
Some kind of an oil tax. I mean, yeah, it's hard to pinpoint one policy that would.
Yeah, but we're doing it one at a time. And of course, the thing about this is understanding it's about multi-solving. One action is not going to change the whole thing, because look, if you're only reducing, increasing energy efficiency, well, and you're relying on non-renewable sources, you're not going to decrease a lot the temperature. So let's look at oil. If I put oil all the way down, how much do you think it's going to decrease? And I could also put a tax. How much do you want to tax oil? Let's do that.
Yeah, I maybe I can answer the first question, probably like 0.8 degrees or something, probably be under 1 degrees, but.
Okay. Should we try taxing it maybe at $200? That seems quite high. Or do you have, because we can go, yeah, okay, let's put 200. Oh, sorry. I think 100 is the max, which makes sense. So if we put 100, so how much did it decrease by? It's not much. It's only 0.1. And the reason for this is because you're basically getting, they're still competing. If you see basically oil has gone down, but basically gas has just eaten all of that up. It's gas now which is becoming one of the major sources of energy. So I'm just going to invite other people because we don't have much time left. Reem, I'd love to hear what you have to say.
Hello. Yeah, so I think the main I would say issue here, why it's hard to choose between the different categories is because they're all linked. So you can't really go into electrification, for example, without you can't really see a positive impact from electrification if you don't lower we don't lower unsustainable and non-renewable energy resources. You can't, so it's more like, what I would be very interested in seeing is if we try to see what the bare minimum is from each, like what is the bare minimum requirement from, if we do if we do the least we could possibly do in order to achieve the most positive results. That's what I'm very curious about seeing. So a little bit of,
so like what are the best, what are the best actions? So what do you think would be the best action? And sorry, I think we're gonna I'd just love to hear, what do you think would be your one action that you think, and of course everything's interrelated. I think it's super important to understand, think of it in terms of systems. Yeah.
I mean, so do we have to choose can we only choose one, or can we choose more than one?
Just one. And look, you can tell me, for example, you want to eat less meat or something like that. What do you think in terms of like changing the world to a more vegetarian diet, that sort of thing?
I mean, that could be possible, and also maybe renewables, so increasing renewables, because when you have more reliance on renewables, you will naturally have less of a reliance on non-renewables. So I would say that would naturally shift the market.
Yeah, so let's look at putting renewables all the way up. So what happens? Only 0.1 degrees.
Oh, wow.
And that's just really highly subsidized. So it is growing, but we're still dependent on gas, oil, and coal. They're still huge. I mean, it's growing, but it's only by 2100 you can see that you're starting to have an impact, and even then it's still quite low, and it takes time. If you start subsidizing these energies, it takes time to grow, especially if they're competing with these other energy sources. So look, we really have to get to that 2 degrees, 1.5. Chris,
not as easy.
I'll wait for those that have raised their hands. So
okay, Sakina. I'm sorry, I'm not if I'm not pronouncing it.
No problem. I think one of those gray areas we need to look at if we're looking at the oil and the gas sector is, for oil sector, we need to change from the dependency. A lot of people actually depend on the oil sector. We need to look at those industries that actually use those oil sector. We need to look at it critically and see which of those activities can we actually change into renewable. Can we now say maybe for industry, they can adopt maybe 40%, they go into 40% into the renewable energy for their facility, if they can actually cut all of their dependency on the oil sector? Can they go into, can the facility actually change to renewable energy in sort of maybe solar panel or maybe some sort of wind system? So we need to identify what are those sectors under the oil and gas first, and see how we can channel some of those activities that can actually meet maybe renewable or other energy or other.
Sorry, I lost you there. But I think going up what you're talking about, and if correct me if I'm wrong, is putting a incentive. So let's say we could put a carbon price.
Yeah.
All right. How high should the carbon price be? And look, I mean, just talking about this, but if we're looking at like regional cases, like I'm in Ireland, And the carbon price is really low. I mean, we're looking at very low carbon price. We're looking at, it's not higher than $30 per ton. So that actually doesn't make much of an impact. So what do you think? How high should it be? I think we should be looking at least over 100. So how do you have a number? Is this something you're familiar with, or do you just want me to crank it higher? Let's say, should I do 150?
Yeah, I'll say let's crank it to the end, if that's okay.
Okay. So actually, they're very optimistic, and they've put it very high, the carbon price. It's all the way to 250. But realistically, we'll probably be looking at 150 if we manage to get this, even if we manage to get a carbon price. But this is huge, huge difference. If you can see here, we've basically gone from down to 0.6, and renewables is huge part of it now, in terms of the energy we're using. Coal is basically nearly non-existent because of the carbon price. We've still got some oil and gas, but they're basically dying off. So that's really effective. We're nearly there. What else do you think would be something that would really help to decrease the temperature down to 1.5?
So Chris here, one of the shockers that most people get when we do the simulation is the impact of planting trees. So afforestation, I would suggest to maybe crank it all the way to the top and see what that impact looks like.
Okay, let's do that. So deforestation. So in this case, are you looking to plant more trees or just to stop deforestation?
I'll say start with planting all the trees that we could potentially plant the world over, all the way to the top.
Okay, so in this case, it's quite a huge amount of trees that we've just planted. And I'll go into more detail, but you've seen it's only decreased by just a very low amount.
Yeah.
0.1 degrees. What do you think that is?
I think it's important.
Please go ahead, Sakina.
Sorry, I think it's very important to see how we can curtail deforestation, because coming back to afforestation program, we've done a lot of tree planting in the last 10 years, and you begin to say that the rate of survival is not that much. So if you go back to the deforestation rate is much higher than the rate of afforestation, because you tend to look at the survival of those seedlings. It's very low. If you plant like maybe 1,000, maybe you can achieve maybe 60%. But if you look at the deforestation rate and you begin to set in some policies and measures, you begin to see that maybe the deforestation rate is actually at 100%. If you put in such measures and policy, you begin to see that it cuts down to maybe at maybe 40. So I think it's very important that those trees are actually got to that extent that they actually absorb much of those carbon. We don't get them cut down, rather than saying that we want to bring in new ones that are just coming up.
Yeah, so actually, for what you said, it's true. A lot of them don't survive, and they take many years to start actually basically taking carbon from the atmosphere. But if you look here, basically you see the dotted line. Well, that's twice the size of India of trees planted. And even then, we've only done 0.1. So, and I'm not saying, by the way, this is part of the solution. It's part of multi-solving. Trees are super important in terms of biodiversity, in terms of even educating people, getting them into nature, getting them connected with nature. But in terms of policies, countries which are saying, well, we're planting loads of trees and carbon offsetting, it's important to understand there's nuances to it. The fact that it actually, in terms of reducing the global temperature, isn't necessarily the highest player. It's part of the solution and super important that people are doing this, but it isn't the only solution. And it's only like, if you think of it, it's not the one solution. It's important that we have many solutions to this. So
if I may pitch in to this before we change the topic,
Because I can also go, we don't really have time, but there's loads of graphs here and I can go more into like how many years it takes for it to start absorbing from the atmosphere. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, so basically I would say deforestation is halting or decreasing the rate of deforestation is actually more important than to an extent more important than afforestation, because even scientists have said that conservation is more important than restoration, and to an extent because first of all it's more efficient, it uses less resources, and you can see a faster result. Also you can't there's you can plant trees all you want, but there's no point unless you stop the cutting down of trees in the first place. So you're planting on one side, there's someone else cutting them down on the other side. So you have to stop it first, and then you can start reintroducing the right types of species of plants, different depending on the ecosystem and the environment.
Right. So how much do you think if I put down deforestation, how much is it going to reduce?
I would say it would have a bigger effect than afforestation, on its own. So maybe I'm hoping at least like a 0.2.
All right.
Or
yeah. So I'm just going to crank it all the way up. Doesn't do much, 0.1. And this is considering we've already had afforestation as part of the solution. So these are hugely important in terms of indigenous cultures and for many other reasons. But in terms of reducing the global temperatures, yeah, it's what we need is many solutions. Again, repeating myself, because this obviously isn't the highest leverage. And as you've seen, carbon price is much higher. So yeah, is there any other ideas? We're nearly there, we're at 2.2. Hopefully we can reach 1.5. If you can make it.
If I can jump in. Oh, sorry.
Yeah, go on, Victoria.
No, I was just going to say, I mean, considering that methane, has a warming potential, I believe, more than 30 times that of CO2. If we were to put that all the way down, we'd be interested to see what that would look like.
Sorry, could you repeat that? I didn't hear.
So I was just saying that knowing that methane has a warming potential, I think it's above 30 times more than CO2. I'd be interested to see what the graph would look like if we were to decrease methane and other gases all the way down as well.
Great. And we can go into more details. What do you think in terms of methane, other gases? What would be ways in which we can reduce it? Just Victoria, what do you think in terms of we can look at what happens when you reduce it, but what do you think would be good policies to reduce it? Or good actions people take?
I mean, whatever major sources of methane, I don't know, I'm not sure which industry, I think it's a transport. No, actually, I'm not sure which industry contributes the most.
So this, yeah, and this is all the industries. Yeah. They represent.
Yeah, right. Okay, so it's only for that industry. Okay, right.
No, it's for all the industries. But like yeah. But it's in terms of land and industry emissions. That's it. So it's not transport.
So if I jump in quickly, it has more to do with what we eat. In my mind. So one of the ways to drop methane quite significantly is changing the diets that we have. A huge part of methane emission come from livestock, right? Right. So I mean, people would have to go to vegetarian diets for a start, and that's on top of like all the other heavy industries that burn quite a lot of methane as well, right? So yeah.
Yeah, and you've got so many leakages of methane, which are a problem.
Absolutely.
So,
absolutely.
Yeah. So let's say everyone becomes vegan, vegetarian. That could be one of the solutions. But let's see anyways, what happens if we highly reduce methane? Yeah, you were right, Victoria. Really decreases it. because as you're saying, it's a really one of the worst gases out there. So we're at a 1.8, and it's gone down 0.4. How can we reach the 1.5? And look, we can even go into more details if you're really interested in terms of diet. Yeah, I don't know if we have time for this, but basically I could go into more detail. But what do you think the next steps that could really work well? What are the next actions that we can take, either as individuals, as countries, or even pushing policies for governments to implement? Sorry, Sakina. You can go. Do you have your hand up?
I think from my own end, I'm saying we need to adopt technology. At least there are some technologies that are emerging, because if we look at going to be more efficient, if we when we are seeing the use of the use of the new technology that is emerging. We've seen the use of drone, which actually reduce a lot of machineries in agriculture and other industries. So this.
Sorry, in this case, technological is for carbon removal. So it's only carbon removal. Yeah, but I do agree in terms of also, yeah, I work a lot with drones and that's, but yeah, carbon removal. What do you think? And you're really right. Super important. What do you think is going to be the impact?
Okay, so on the general impact, is going to reduce the emission cost and it's going to save more, because looking at before now, if you actually spray that land, you actually need more people to actually go into that. So that way you have more people that are going to be using on that farmland, and then you're going to be spending so much. But if you have a drone, it means maybe in 1 hour timing, you can actually spray all of your farm. And if you're using machineries, it means you're going to go back into buying of either diesel or using either other fuel that still having more carbon emitted from that source.
Yeah.
And looking at the agricultural produce, can we actually turn them into biofuel that can actually be used for household rather than just burning them off and then that's all?
Yeah, so really those are great technologies, but in this case, it's only carbon removal. So there's new technologies. And by the way, this is actually very optimistic because it thinks that, and you're going to see now the impact of it. So I'm just going to ask you, Sakina, as to how much do you think in terms of degrees is going to have as an impact? But basically, they're very optimistic in terms of they think we don't have the technology. That's the thing. Basically, I had a conversation with someone's working in Cambridge on this, and the technology isn't there yet. But if you're looking at 20, in a couple of years, the technology should be there. And this is basically because we're basically doing a prediction. We're going to be looking at what happens at 2100. So we're basically thinking that it's going to be, we're going to invent really good carbon removal technologies. So how much do you think that is, Sakina?
I'll go with, let's say 40%. Let's see how it goes.
Sorry, how much?
40%.
Sorry, I didn't catch that. Was that 14? No.
And 40%.
40% of 40% of what we have currently.
Yeah.
Okay. And how much do you think? So about halving what we have. So we'll go way past. Will we go past the 1.5? You think? Yeah.
It should, because at first you have to do a lot of. It's not easy for people to actually change their technology or previous adoption. So it's gonna take. It is. Then people begin to. But for now, it's going to be something that you have to go through a test of time and adoption from people. So let's say for now we can have 0.4.
Let's see if it brings us down to. It seems like it does. And that's only if we're going halfway. We reached 1.5 degrees. So this is huge. If we get the carbon removals working, we can reach to the 1.5. And there you go. 1.3. That's huge. I mean, you guys are obviously very good at this, but congratulations. You got to give yourself, yeah, you can be happy you've managed to save the world, to bring it down to 1.3 degrees. I mean, I've done a lot of workshops. It's usually hard to reach that. So congrats. You've reached basically the temperature. And it's interesting to see as well different graphs. So I know you guys had your hand up. I'm just gonna look at different ways. We can look at the impact. So a lot of you were talking about biodiversity, especially in terms of when you're talking about afforestation. But look here, because of what you guys have done, basically, we were gonna have we have diversity loss is going down to 0%, 1%, 1%, compared to 56% it was going to be, 55 for insects, plants 51, mammals 28% if we were going to continue with the scenario that we had. So you guys have really saved so many species by being able to implement these different actions. But also, and this is really important, is looking at deaths. I mean, in India, we've had extreme heat, which is really horrible. And you can see it's expected if we don't change to increase to 9.1% in Southeast Asia. But here you've managed to decrease it to 1.8, to 1.5 degrees in Southern Europe, South America to 1 degrees, and Australia to 0.5. So that's really good. And now let's look at sea level rise. So here, this is something cool you can do. And I'm also showing you, so we don't have much time today. And Christopher, please interrupt me if I go over time. But what we're going to be looking at is, for example, sea level rise. So here, with the scenario that you guys have been able to do, we've been able to really basically decrease the sea level rise. So is there any place you'd like me to check out in terms of sea level rise? Could probably look at Dublin, where I am, or even let's say Hanoi. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, let's look at Africa. Let's look at Nigeria, Africa.
Nigeria, okay. Well, do you have a city in mind, or just the whole continent?
Let's look at Abuja or Lagos.
Okay, and just so you can see, that was the land at risk to 2100 in Hafong, which is really close to the sea, and the land saved by actions. So all the green. That's how you, with the temperature decreased to 1.3%, you're able to save all this land. So could you repeat the name, Sakina, please, of the place?
I'll say let's try Lagos. She picked two options, Abuja and Lagos, but Lagos is closer to both lines.
Nigeria.
All right, Lagos. Oof. So that's the land at risk. I mean, some land got saved. It's still at risk though. But yeah, you can see here, basically the land at risk is the blue, the dark blue, and the land saved by action is green, and you can see a lot of dots. So really, it would help a lot.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Right. So I know, Killian, if that's okay, I know Lagos pretty well. Maybe just to give a sense of what we're looking at, Sakina, basically even at 1.3, we're seeing Ikorodu being flooded, all the way to Ikorodu being flooded. So that's huge. I mean, how much more if we're talking at 3.6? It's going to be the whole of Lagos gone.
Yeah, Ikorodu, and I can see Lekki, and I think part of Badagry, outside Badagry, when you're heading to Ikorodu, I think these are gray areas. These are gray areas. Even at 1.5. Oh, that's a huge one.
Yeah, so
yeah,
right. So Killian, I'm just also looking at the time. Kyrios is on the call, and maybe I'll have a chat with Kyrios, and I think Evangelos is, oh, he's logged off. Right, so I can have a chat with the working group members, and we can schedule like a 2-hour session rather than 1 hour. The 1 hour one, I think, is very sharp, gives people a sense of what the sort of options in terms of climate policy recommendations and action need to be. But if we want to dig into like the meat of it, the more time we have, then the more people can get an appreciation. So we're going to do a test of interests and then come back and maybe schedule a 2-hour session to dig in and get a lot more information out there. I think if we can wrap up in the next 1 minute or two and then make the video available to everyone. Kyrios, your hand is up.
Yeah, thanks very much, Chris. So first, I would like to thank Kilian for his work and for hosting the session today. And second, I just thought I'd like to provide a suggestion on maybe for a slightly longer session. So in the beginning, we mentioned that probably we wouldn't go into the details of how the simulation works. But for me personally, actually, it would be really interesting to find out, because what we saw throughout this workshop, and I'm sure that many of the young leaders on this call are very much aware of, is that there is no single silver bullet to solve climate change, and you're always looking at various combinations of solutions and how when you change one policy, it affects other policies as well, and have to make readjustments, and how to really have to come up with a balanced solution. So for me, it would be really interesting just to understand how the simulator was actually built to account for this balance.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So actually, yeah, and that's very interesting. And you can change the assumptions, but basically the most of the assumptions are from the IPCC report. And in terms of how it's built, you look at system dynamics, and that's a whole basically field. I've studied it, so I could help. I could even do a presentation on that if you want me to. But it's creating models from a systems perspective. So in terms of modeling, you have different ways you can model different scenarios. But this one, be able to look at policies and different things through more of a system dynamics view. And yeah, if you're interested. But I think there's so much, as Chris was saying, you can actually go into just simulating, looking at different graphs and aspects of it. And also, if you guys are interested, there's also the next, in August, there's going to be a simulation game. And in that, you're basically playing, it usually lasts quite a long time. So that would be at least 4 hours. But there you'd really be able to deep dive in how basically a simulation of the UN. So that's something as well where I'd be able to deep dive further. And I'm actually going to share, someone in the chat I saw was asking for the link to the simulator, and it's free, free to access. And also I'm going to share a link now to the simulation that we've just done. So you guys can access the scenario that we've just created of 1.2 degrees. And I know that Chrissy said I should wrap up. So I'm just going to, for the people that weren't there at the beginning as well, I'd love to connect with you. So I'm sharing my LinkedIn. You can add me on LinkedIn as well. And yeah, I think check out basically the scenario. Climate Interactive as well are running courses. So I'm currently training some ambassadors. Basically, that's what they're called, climate ambassadors, people, professors, people around the world who do these workshops, and they're trying to train more people. So if you go on the website, you can probably sign up for the next training. Currently, I know there's a boot camp. There's basically a training camp, but it's already started. So unfortunately, you wouldn't be able to join that. But yeah, I think if you're interested, it'd be great as well. Just reach out to me if you think someone would benefit from it, either your organization as youth leaders or anyone who you think would really benefit from that. Yeah, and thank you so much. And really, you should be proud of yourselves. You reached the 1.3 degrees. It's very hard to reach. And yeah, and we can see, I'm proud of the youth leaders anyways. I know we're, anyways, to have you in the call and see the people who are pushing the action, because you guys obviously know a lot. So it was really interesting hearing about what each of you are doing as well. So thank you.
Thank you very much, Killian. Thanks, everyone. Thanks. I mean, it's been a really insightful session, and we're going to repeat this, a more extended sort of version of what you've just seen and heard. So on that note, I'll say thank you, everyone, and see you at the next capacity building event. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was really super amazing joining. See you next session.
Right. Thanks. Thank you.